And now I'd like to present a friend from US who I met in Chicago, and she was organizing her conference. So she is an author, a researcher, she is a conference organizer. She travels all around the world trying to find out the connection between those ancient structures and ancient civilizations and consciousness. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Meg Blackbourn.
Wow, how am I going to follow that? I'm just a country girl. I'd like your permission to stretch your reality just a little bit tonight. Would that be okay? Great. So what I want to talk to you about tonight is the relationship between consciousness and the pyramids and creation and how it all works together and how it affects us in our lives, how we're put together, how our consciousness works in all of that, how we create reality, and a few other things. And what I've done, it's going to be kind of fast. I put two lectures together because I've been listening to you outside and I've been hearing a lot of questions, and I thought maybe I'd try to answer them tonight. So that's what I want to talk with you about. If we're going to talk about the creation of reality, we need to start with the ancients. Like Dr. Sam says, history is backwards. There were people here at a time way in our past that we don't have any specific records of that actually had technologies. You know that. You've seen a lot of evidence of that this week. I call those the before times. There's a lot of times where we just don't know anything. But there are times when we also do have information. We talked, you've heard all weekend about the relationships of Orion and some of the pyramid sites, not only in Egypt and Teotihuacan, but also in Bosnia now. It's laid out exactly the same way, exactly the same orientations, that kind of thing. And we have evidence all over the world of high intelligence in a time where we have no records. One of the things that was found from ancient Sumeria is an object called the planisphere, which actually tracks the stars and the projection of an asteroid that actually hit the planet back then. We have depictions in ancient Egypt of... In ancient Egypt, we see depictions of higher awareness in the form of orbs. Now, if you listen to the guides in Egypt, they'll tell you that's the sun or the moon. Well, if it's yellow, it's the sun. If it's red, it's the moon. Not. Okay? What this is, it's an indication that these beings had higher awareness, higher consciousness. You'll also see this in many other sites. The petroglyphs, religious artifacts, particularly from the Renaissance period forward. Always an orb around the head signifying enlightenment. So what this means is that at the same time we had higher consciousness, higher awareness, higher sciences, we were also more enlightened. There were certain beings that were more enlightened that brought these things to us on our planet. And you're going to see just maybe 3 or 4 slides that were also in the Hertox presentation. I took these pictures when I was there. But the panel at Abydos is really important because not only does it show the helicopter, the space shuttle, it shows racks of missiles, a submarine, and a UFO to us, and some other things we aren't really sure what they are. So no matter where you go in the world, I said this is in Dendera, but I haven't been able to actually find that one in the temple. It's a picture of 2 guys holding what looks to be an hourglass-shaped object with a strand of DNA inside. And also if you go to the temples, particularly the Temple of Horus, you'll see panels that depict brain surgery and open heart surgery and the instruments that they used. You also saw this one earlier today, the Dendera light bulb, where they had the technology to actually light the temples and light the insides of the pyramids and the tunnels there using what they call the Baghdad battery that was discovered also in the area. In Tiwanaku, in Bolivia, there's a amazing site. There's a pyramid that's still buried. They haven't excavated it yet. And there's a sunken temple there. And at the entrance to that is kind of a guardian. And he has, whoops, sorry, wrong direction. He has on his shoulder a star map. And if you look at it closely, look what's here. Now, they don't even know exactly when this was built, but the technology in Tiwanaku is far beyond anything we can still do today. On top of the pyramid, there is a row of blocks that are really big. They're megalithic blocks. And each one of those has a different magnetic north. Each one of these blocks, if you put a compass on it, shows north in a different direction. My hypothesis about this area is that each one of those blocks anchors a field of energy based on the magnetic north, which if they were to repair the site, because it was damaged when the conquistadors went through, and a lot of the structures are broken or tipped over or gone, they would find that there would be a field of energy patterns that should represent the Kabbalah, the tree of life. Right next door in Pumapunka is even more technology. They cut the blocks in the form of H's that interlock with each other. And they have drill patterns and cut patterns that we can't even make in rock with diamond drills. So what about what we can't prove? We've got times like Atlantis and Lemuria. We all know about it. It's followed forward in oral traditions with the indigenous people all over the planet, plus the myths and legends that we like to propagate, whether they're true or not, who knows. But there were definitely civilizations that had technologies to do things like carve the crystal skulls. Not the ones they're making in China today, but ones that actually have phenomenal energy properties and communicative properties. There's Bimini Road, off of Florida and the Bahamas, that was discovered the same year that Edgar Cayce said that Atlantis was going to rise again. There are a lot of sites that claim to be Atlantean, and the reason for that is that Atlantis was not a singular place, but it had a lot of outposts, and they traveled all over the planet. They went to Egypt, they went to Indonesia, they went to Polynesia. They went all over the planet. And so when the cataclysmic times happened, there were Atlanteans that were stranded in these different places. And so what they did was they shared the technologies they had, particularly with the Egyptians, Easter Island. That's why you see the spheres in so many places that you saw in another talk before. It's why you see so many repetitive patterns of technology around the planet. And of course, here in Bosnia, we have the pyramids, we have the tunnels, and very interestingly, inside of the tunnels are pyramid carvings. There are rocks anywhere from this big to this big. You can find them. And also diamond shape. That's going to mean a lot to you in a minute, so remember that, okay? The diamond shape is very important geometrically. But what does all of this really mean to us? I mean, this is very cool stuff. The science is awesome. The measurements are great. But what? You know? So I wanted to talk to you about that tonight. And I want to tell you a different version of Genesis. It's actually very similar to the one you know, but I want to take it in a little bit different direction tonight. In the beginning, there was a mass of energy that moved, it pulsed, it vibrated, and as it did, inside of it was created a frictional response. In other words, static electricity, sparks of light. And the more that happened, the more excited this writhing mass of energy got. And as it did, it created more light and more light. And as it used energy, it created energy. It constantly reinvented itself. And as it did, and it got more excited, the light got more and more inside of this, more energy, more excitement. And because of that, the light pushed out the darkness to a point where the darkness literally collapsed in on the light. the light was dispersed in every direction. Funny thing about light, it remembers everything. We use it in the form of fiber optics in our technologies today. Light records very much like a cassette tape does, okay? Light remembers, it collects data, and it never forgets. It can't forget, it's recorded, it's part of the nature of this thing. And as this happened, it moved out in a spiral form. A lot of the movies lately have talked about the Fibonacci sequence. You saw in the last couple of talks references to the golden mean and that kind of thing. That's what this is. The Fibonacci sequence is a mathematical formula that can be portrayed in picture form that shows the natural pattern of how energy flows. And as the energy was dispersed outward, one of the rules of physics is that everything will seek its natural order. And in seeking its natural order, the light began to form as four-sided pyramids. You with me? I'm going kind of fast because I want to show you a lot in an hour. Okay, in these four-sided pyramids is everything that every particle of light had experienced since it had been dispersed from its creation. So what you have in the four-sided pyramid is the first expressed form of consciousness manifested. Think the ancients might have been trying to tell us something? And this is just what I just said. So, not the three-sided pyramid, the four-sided pyramid, and there's a reason for that, and I'll go into it right here. Inside of a four-sided pyramid is perfect geometry. Not only is the pyramid a contained mass of consciousness, but inside of it there's a spiral, the widest part at the bottom, and it goes around and around until it gets to the top. Well, that spiral has every frequency in creation. It starts at the most base frequency, and then as it moves up, it gets higher and higher and higher until it gets to the apex of the pyramid and becomes white. White light containing every frequency. So that moves clockwise. Then there's a sphere that's inside of the pyramid, and it's moving clockwise as well. The sphere that's inside of the pyramid is the same as the source energy where all of that light came from. It organized inside of the pyramid, and it into an orb form. Now, the reason that the pyramid is so stable and the four-sided is because when you've got a clockwise rotation of a spiral, you've got a clockwise rotation of a sphere, so you've got this going on. It's got its own built-in energetic gyroscope. It cannot get out of balance. As time went on and the organization continued, the next thing that happened was the pyramids ordered into octahedrons that look like this. Each one containing all of the consciousness in each one of the pyramids that came together to form this. So what you have in the octahedron is the absolute perfect particle of creation as the natural building block of everything. Everything there is created of particles that look like this. They're contained, they have consciousness, and they order like this. So what happens is, could you please hand me my water there, JJ, right by you? The other one. That one, thanks. Sorry, guys. Thank you. As they order based on opposite polarities. You know, when you take two magnets and you put them the right way, they attract each other, and you turn them around and they go apart, but only for a certain distance. Well, that's how the particles organize. And as they do, they leave little empty spaces in between. Those are the null zones, as I like to call them. And in between these zones is where information travels, energy travels, our prayers, our intentions, any energy that's expended whatsoever moves through these particles between these particles of creation, and as it does, energy is light. Energy has information, and it communicates with these, and as it does, these start to wobble in place and then will turn over And as they do, they reorganize with the same spacing, and when they reorganize, we get a new reality. Isn't that cool? So when you send out an intention and you want to create something and you want to do it solidly, information moves like this through the null zones as a total package. All of the information that's needed goes through those, between those particles, and in a nice order. But if we go, well, I think I want to do this, but I'm not sure if I could or I should, or what if so-and-so doesn't do their part, or what if I don't deserve it, then what we do is every time we do that, we send a little bit different message out into creation. It's broken, and it's communicating very poorly. So as it does, the particles will kind of start to do one of these things, and then it'll stop. How many times have you seen something start to come to you that you really wanted to happen, and then all of a sudden it stops? Something gets in the way, and no matter how hard you work at it, how hard you try to force it, the darn thing falls apart, right? That's because you sent messages like this, okay? How many of you do affirmations? Anybody here? Don't ever do it again. The reason is that we are uniquely and harmonically attuned. We are created of those same kind of particles that are arranged to become a reflection of us as holographic reality. And each time we express something, we're in a different mood, we feel different, our biology is different, but even more important, we are in a different now. And the reason that's important is because in every now, we are being reharmonized with all of creation in order to maintain our balance and our expression as an individual being. We are constantly sending information and receiving information, and I'm going to show you how that works in a little bit. So all of that's going on in any given moment, and creation is responding, and creation is reordering based. Can you imagine the choreography of all of us and all of our intentions and all of our experiences and all of the energy that we create and expend happening at once, and somebody keeping track and say, okay, do this over here and do this over here? Well, creation does this absolutely beautifully. And as it does, we get a nice solid message out there. And when we get that message, it's really important to remember not to limit it by having expectations or too specific, okay? The reason I say that is there are infinite possibilities available to us in creation. Absolutely infinite. Creation has all these wonderful things that it can draw from to bring us the absolutely best possibility of what we're looking for. But if we have an expectation, what we do is we set something up as a pass or fail situation. Okay? What we expect or less. What we expect or nothing. Because when we do that, we make our energy so tight it actually compacts and it can't communicate fully. So what we're trying to communicate, what we're sending out, is not going very far. It's just kind of hovering here. All right? But if we can just relax and know that we've created something, it's done, and there will be a moment in time where we and it intersect. You with me? So it's not about saying here's a great example. I used to have a group that met at my house, and there was a woman who came, and every week we set our intentions for the week. We did all the stuff everybody does in the metaphysical groups, and every week she would come, and she had bought this little farm, and it was just really idyllic, and she was working hard to make it a nice place, and she was single, and every week she'd say, I want a man. And he has to love the farm. I really want him to want to work around there and be handy. I want him to be able to run a weed eater because there's so much work to be done. And she had a laundry list every week. So she meets this guy, and she marries him. We gave her a weed eater for her wedding present. And what happened was she forgot a few things to suggest that perhaps her new mate would love her, would provide with her, would do all of the things that a really well-matched couple does. And he absolutely loved the place. He never left. He didn't go to work. He hung around. And it took her 2 years to get rid of the guy. Okay? So she tried it again. And then the next guy loved her insanely, literally. The guy was not right. And when she tried to talk to him about things, he started burning down her barns and doing terrible things that were very destructive. And it took her another 2 years to get rid of this guy. So she decided she's going to stay single for a while, so now she'll probably find the right one. But my point is, she was so specific. She was very mentally organized, very analytic kind of a personality. And she limited her manifesting so much that she got only and exactly what she put out there. So I like to pick on her, and she knows I do it, because it makes a really good point of how we get in our own way. All right? Dimensions, ordered the same way. From the tiniest possible particle of creative mass to the largest, everything is the same shape, the octahedral shape, and it all aligns the same way, just like this, with opposite polarities. And creation looks very much like a honeycomb. All right? All of the, you have, and when you have dimensional portals or doorways, they're all in these kind of places, in these empty places. That's where you move between dimensions. That's how the UFOs, you know, when you see them in the sky and all of a sudden they go psh, and they disappear, they're using the dimensional construct to travel. And so this is really important. When we have a dimensional shift, you have to remember that we live within this dimension. We are the consciousness within the reality that we live. And so the more that we learn how to get into higher states of awareness, the more we live that, the more we can relax our defenses, the more that we learn how to create from a positive standpoint, that we allow things to be unlimited, the more we change the balance from the inside of our dimension. And then when a dimension shifts, it doesn't like float away into Never Never Land and some, you know, la-la Shangri-La kind of thing. It literally changes its position in relation to all of the other dimensions. What happened? That was weird. Okie dokie. Well, this is what happens when we start playing with energy. Things start rearranging. So, to further understand what's going on and what's happening with consciousness and creation, I want to just give you a little mini sacred geometry lesson. And never done this in front of the Her Talks, so this is going to be new for me. But the basic form of sacred geometry is the circle. The circle representing all of divinity. Okay? This is everything. This is creation, geometrically. The spot in the middle is divinity. And the reason it's expressed this way geometrically is that you can't do anything within creation without at some point encountering your divinity. Think about that. And then I wanted to talk to you about the torus, which has the basic circle form, and you saw in the last talk the nice little animation. I got to figure out where he got that. That is the toroid form. Now what's interesting geometrically, here's what it looks like inside. Isn't that gorgeous? I mean, don't you just want to crawl in there and just sit for a while? This is what's really interesting. Our universe is toroid in nature. Okay, our solar system emits a toroid of energy. The Earth's core moves in a toroid fashion. Our sun moves in a toroid fashion. Black holes are toroid in fashion. I said that 3 weeks ago in Tucson, and the next morning the cover of the science section in the New York Times had a picture of a black hole as a toroid. Yay, we're making a difference. They're starting to consider ideas. And our galactic center is a toroid. We live in a toroid, but more about that in a minute. So what happens with a toroid? How does it work? Well, you take that basic circle of sacred geometry And then you start adding the different circles. Now this is the same exact thing that happened with the Mayan calendar. If you took each subset of the Mayan calendar and you put it together, ultimately it becomes a toroid. But in the process of that, you come to a point where you create the flower of life, which is very, very important. And then you get to the toroid, you get to a more complex form, and then finally the toroid, but the projector is doing something funky up here. So in these times, and in the times when the pyramid builders were happening, in the times when there were periods of enlightenment, and then periods where there were dark ages and terrible things happened, and we didn't honor each other as beings. We go into periods of dark ages. We forget what we know. We become very dense because that's what's happening in creation, and it's all cyclic. And then as time goes on, we start to get more and more balance. Does this look familiar? Do you see this in the Celtic countries, this similar design? Okay. And then time goes on and you start getting the more complex designs. And at the same time, we become more and more and more awake. And as we wake up, geometrically represented, we get to a point where the whole toroid is happening. And that's when we hit the ascension point. That's when we are fully enlightened as beings, and we're able to achieve a marriage of our humanity and our divinity. Are you with me so far? Okay. Here's the flower of life, just to forget that down there, that was another talk. But this is what the flower of life looks like, and it can be found in many of the sacred sites all over the planet. In the ossuary behind the temple of Dendera, unfortunately it's fading terribly, in weavings in Turkey, in pottery, in many places. I mean, everywhere you'll find this in the most primitive places. So they've kept the fact that it's very important to life, but nobody knew why. So then we want to talk about the pyramid for a minute. And when you take the upright pyramid and the inverted pyramid and you put them together, turning it at 45, the top at 45 degrees, what you get is the star tetrahedron, or the Merkaba. Okay, a lot of you know that. The Merkaba, and I'm sorry this wasn't in color, overlaid into the flower of life fits beautifully. A lot of you have seen this with the Hertog's work, with Drumlo Melchizedek's work, also in mine, and also the flower of, or the tree of life, the Kabbalah, fits absolutely perfectly within the flower of life as well. Now what does this all mean? You're wondering where I'm going, right? I'm going to tell you in a minute. Even the astrology wheel, with its 12 houses, if you overlay it over a flower of life, each one of the houses correlates perfectly with one of the petals of the flower of life. So even astrology roots from this geometry at some point back in time before we remember it. So it gets even better though, okay? Here's the star tetrahedron in color and the tree of life. And then you can add the Christian cross, and it fits perfectly. And then you add, gosh, this is kind of annoying. You add the Ru'el Habib, which is one of the major Muslim symbols, and it overlays the flower of life perfectly as well. So every major religion in our world, their symbolism comes from a basis of the flower of life, which represents total awakening, totally high awareness, okay? I wish you could see that. I'm sorry. There's a focus thing on the projector that needs to be adjusted. Uh-oh. Yeah, I really, it's showing on the computer, so it has to be the projector. Let's give it a second, see if they can straighten that out so you can see it, because it's really worth looking at. Thank you. See if he can get it. I will. Yeah, if he can get it, I'll back up just a minute so you can see those. Somebody has a question. You want to? Did I hear that? While we're waiting, ask a question. Ask a question. Yeah, just do the best you can. I don't want to run late with the talk because of tech issues. I really need the pictures though to go where I'm going. Yeah, yeah. So every major religion draws its symbology from the flower of life, and this is really important. Because if you look at the complexity, oh, better, that's better, that's good, we'll go there. If you look at the complexity of the symbology, you can see that it happened, that the more enlightened the times, the more complex the symbology is. And when Christianity started, it was a world that was kind of in a real ignorant place in a lot of ways, and some really awful things happened back then, and so I know that a lot of people will say the cross represents the crucifixion, but every symbology has roots. Okay, every symbology has roots, and if you read Dan Millman's books, you can learn all about that. But you see, what happens is when you overlay all of the major symbology of religion, you get a multidimensional aspect, which is why each of them sees God in a different way. And I'm sure in this audience we have probably some of everyone, which I think is so cool. All right, but it's why at those times that these belief systems started, the place we were at in that evolution of the torus had everything to do with the ability to imagine greater scope of divinity. So then I want to talk to you about how this applies to us in consciousness, because it's really important to see that all of this isn't just cool stuff, and the ancients weren't just leaving pyramids around for the heck of it. All right. So let's look at this from a bit of a metaphysical perception for just a minute. Or a few minutes, or a half an hour. The upright pyramid represents us as individualized consciousness. It's the first expression of consciousness. Remember what I said a little while ago. And as that, we as individuals can be represented this way. You can do exercises, they're in a couple of my books, that you can actually project your consciousness into one of these and hear your own unique frequency in all of creation. You can literally meet your own energy, because we're created of all of those particles. And all of that energy is cool because it's not just energy, it's color, it's light, and it's sound all at the same time. So all of that is happening. It all has color that's in constant motion and constantly changing. It has sound, which is constant in each organization. This is why, for instance, that cloning can't work. It's why, after a certain period of time, that when you have a cloned animal, like the sheep or something, the clone will die after a certain period of time because the DNA will start breaking down. I'm going to show you why in a minute. You can't have two of the same unique and individual frequencies in any reality at the same time. If you take the inverted pyramid, it represents the entirety of creation, the universal mind, the Akashic records, whatever you want to call it. It's everything, all right, represented geometrically. And then you put them together, and a very interesting thing happens when we build the Merkaba. We have us and creation, and the culmination of creation and us, the true Trinity. This is the true Trinity represented as sacred geometry. Built with the four-sided pyramid, which is perfectly balanced. When you put the two pyramids together, what happens is the two spheres come together, the ones that are inside, they start to smash, they wobble, and then they pop into one single perfect torus. Imagine that. Back to the spiral related to consciousness, we have a Fibonacci spiral in our brains. Okay? Some of you will say, my guidance comes from back here. Some of you will say it comes from here. Some of you will say, I'm it and it's me. The reason for that is that there are different levels of consciousness along this spiral. But what's really interesting about this spiral is it centers around the pineal gland. And as it comes around, it crosses over the pituitary, the hypothalamus, rides up the corpus callosum, which is the bridge between the two halves of our brain, across our crown, and then back between the two occipital bones that we have in the back of our head. The spiral related to consciousness looks like this. In the very back of our head, when we first start to wake up, you know, one of the first things that happens, we might see colors, we might know who's on the telephone, we might get a glimpse of somebody out of the corner of our eye and then they disappear, you know, any number of small little flashes of things or intuitive things, and they come through the back of the head. This is the first state of gamma consciousness, above theta, finer frequency brainwaves. Science is just starting to sincerely and seriously study gamma consciousness. The second level of gamma consciousness, which I call gamma 2, starts in the crown. And that's what I call the communion phase. That's when we can literally work multidimensionally, interdimensionally, and interact with beings outside of this reality. We can communicate, we can actually be there and be aware of ourselves here at the same time. I do it all the time, it's really weird. But you can learn a lot. There are a lot of beings out there that have really great information, and there's some that just occasionally, you know, get in the wrong neighborhood and you don't really want to talk to. But then if you follow the spiral around and it wraps around the pineal gland, which again medicine and science doesn't know a lot about, you get to the ascension point. And when you can learn to get to this level of consciousness, what happens is you can literally turn the white light and disappear. You can actually take your body with you. We've heard stories about this. Take your body with you other dimensionally and experience yourself in your free, unfettered from the physical nature. And at the same time, you can bilocate, you can do all kinds of really neat stuff. This is where you join, and you can actually intentionally join the universal mind. You become consciously aware of that and still able to bring that back into the physical, which is very cool. So basically what you learn to do in the third state of gamma consciousness is merge your humanity and your divinity through all of your aspects multidimensionally. I'm going to show you about that in a minute. You create a perfect balance, no defenses, you're perfectly relaxed, everything is just humming and communicating well together, and now you can reach your attention out in any direction and get information or share information, and it will be true and it will be accurate until you decide you want to think about it. Consciousness and the brain are different. The brain is electrical. It develops pathways based on experience that are very predictable and measurable, and it's electrical in nature. It does have a bit of an electromagnetic field, but in the truest sense, it's very linear in its functioning. It fires and it follows neurons, and it jumps across the axiom as the electricity moves through the brain. Consciousness is different. It's not limited to time or space. It's not limited to physical nature. It is superluminal, faster than the speed of light, can go anywhere, anytime, and it can do multiple things simultaneously. And once you learn to do this, it's quite interesting to be able to watching yourself doing something while yourself is there being done too. I mean, it can get very complex, but it's quite an interesting experience to be able to experience yourself in all of these different natures simultaneously. When we bilocate, we laugh about it. Oh, I thought I saw you over there. Well, maybe I was. You know, but the truth is when we bilocate, what we're doing is that same kind of thing. So there's a lot of metaphysical, so-called achievements that are very natural when you learn to get into this state. As this filters down and starts to form into us as physical beings, it starts by forming in helixes, double helixes, just like the energy you saw in the last talk. I got so excited, I just totally knew something. This was taken by Dr. Morris at UCLA, and it's of the DNA nebula. This is a natural occurrence out in space. Well, for us, DNA looks like a twisted ladder. It has segments of proteins, amino acids, that are our coding. They're our coding. Most of that coding we don't use yet, or we didn't until the last few years, and now it's starting to wake up. Originally, and I validated this after I learned it, I validated it with a geneticist, used to be communications along the DNA strand moved up one side from, or in a very linear way, from one segment to the other. Then a few years back, the communication started hopping across the strand back and forth. And when it does, it communicates with segments that have been sleeping or dormant for millennia. And this is really important because what's happening is that we're starting, consciousness is directly related to DNA. And they're starting to show in laboratories where you can stimulate a DNA strand and have another part of it or another identical strand across town, and it will respond identically to the one that was stimulated. So the other thing that's really neat about the DNA is around it there is a light field. It emits light. It has a glow all around it. It's kind of small, but nevertheless there is a glow there. And just like now, science is actually able to measure the light field that we emit from our bodies. Our DNA has the same thing. And what's really fascinating, even when DNA replicates, it divides in half and then it goes and it finds another half and it comes back together. It remembers everything the light has ever been from the first moment in time from our beginning is contained in our DNA strands. And as we get into higher and higher states of consciousness, what happens is each level of gamma consciousness, the energy field around our DNA expands. And when we get to the point near our pineal gland of ascension consciousness, what happens is the light fields of our DNA expand so much that they unify in our bodies. And our bodies and our consciousness are the same thing. Also, by the way, non-Hertzian, as you heard about the pyramid, we work the same way once we learn how to go back there. We get past the density, the light fields expand, and we become one with everything energetically and physically and consciously. Isn't that cool? But there's more. I'm going to show you very quickly, how am I doing? Okay. I'm going to show you very quickly how all of this comes together to be us and what this means to us as creatures of divinity expressed and manifested in human form. Okay? We have an external field that is around us. It is not our aura. It is a field of energy, just like our DNA has, that does a lot of things. It's a translation station. It takes information from creation and it modulates it down into a way that we can understand and our intuitive nature can pick it up. It sends information out about our experience, our emotions, our desires, our intentions, everything. and it modulates it into finer frequencies, into creation, so creation can bring us what we're looking for. It picks up energies from our experiences and it processes them, and it also can collect junk. There's a lot of things that can happen with this field. And the aura is not the field, however, it's a reflection of light off of that field. So when you get your aura picture taken, what you're actually getting is a reflection of light of the interaction of you inside your external field and creation. And so your aura is showing how you are interacting with creation. Are you calm? Are you divinely connected? Are you healing? Are you expressive? Are you learning? All of those things can show up in your aura pictures. And it can get pretty interesting. So this is how the external field looks to me. And by the way, I see this stuff. I live this stuff. It is who I am and what I see. And trying to draw graphics based on what you see outside of this reality is kind of hard. It's so linear. I did the best I could. So this is how an external field looks. And it has its own grid system. And they all connect at what we call axiom points all around the outside edge. Those connect into the grid system of creation. So we're always, always connected. And sometimes we have problems in there and things get blocked or disconnected or injured, and so our external field doesn't work well. But this is a nice healthy field. This is my friend Jules. I slapped her on the table in my backyard and we had a good time. This is kind of how the aura works, with the external field here, the yellow, and then the colors reflecting off of it. Okay? Still with me? I know this is really a lot, really fast. Okay. And then I broke everything down into how it works and what's connected to what, so you could really understand your own healing processes better and your healthful processes better. We have what most of you know, most cultures refer to as a pranic tube. It's like a hose of energy. It comes through the crown, down through the center of our body, and out at the base of our spine. Okay, it's coming in from up here, and it's bringing in energy from above, universal cosmic energy, and from below, from the earth. Guess what a chakra really looks like? This is the anatomy of a chakra, and I actually see this. A chakra is a pyramid. Inside of it is a revolving sphere. Inside of it is a revolving vortex, spiral. And a chakra on what I like to call a good day is perfectly balanced and humming like crazy, just working really well. The chakra is attached. It sits wide side down on top of the body. There's one in the front, one in the back. And it sits over an aperture. It looks like a blinking eye that's doing this. It kind of goes with the flow, okay? It's like a check valve. It opens and closes with the flow of energy. Well, where does that energy come from? Remember the pranic tube a minute ago? It's feeding energy into the chakras. The chakras are spinning. The vortex inside is spinning. It's picking up energy out of the pranic tube, and it's distributing it somewhere really interesting. This is kind of a really bad graphic of how they look on the body, okay, and from the top. And they all have a field of energy around them as well. Then we have two vortices on our body that connect. And first of all, what's really interesting is the chakras attached. There's two layers to our external field. There's an inside wall and an outside wall. The chakras attach to the inside wall and bring information up, you'll see this in a minute, to our external field. The vortices attach to the outside wall of our external field. So we have one here, and we have one in the area of what is called the dantian, where in martial arts they tell you to bear down and build your energy. That's because when you do that, you're closing this vortex temporarily. The upper vortex is related to our multidimensional aspects. It communicates everything that's going on with us to all of the other us's in every other layer of reality, and yes, we are there, past, present, future. The one down here comes in, and it's bringing us information from our entire lineage, all of our ancestors, and beyond a point, our past lives. So we've got all of this information coming in and going out just in a really nice flow through the vortices. And I couldn't find good vortex graphics, but that's kind of how they flow. The upper one is clockwise, the lower one is counterclockwise. And if you could see it, the top one is yellow. It's a very beautiful yellow. And the lower one is real red. And then we have the Kundalini. And if you're wondering where this is going, I'm going to put it together for you in a minute. Kundalini, on a good day, looks like a chain of light. And what it's actually doing, and most people's Kundalini is not all the way up. That happens as you become higher vibrational, higher states of consciousness, higher states of awareness. Your Kundalini builds. And you can also do Kundalini yoga. There's exercises, you know, of course you can do to work on this. But the Kundalini works, it's a double helix, just like our DNA, okay? Just like the non-Tesla energy that he was showing a little while ago. And it weaves in and out around our chakras. And what the Kundalini does is it modulates the energy that's being distributed from our chakras and keeps them balanced. So we've got the pranic tube that the chakras are feeding off of, and then we've got the Kundalini, which is modulating all of that flow up and down, okay? And then, like this, with the chakras, it's real exaggerated, all right? Like this. And then we have the meridian system. The chakras, as they spin and distribute energy, which is modulated by the Kundalini, are sending energy to the meridian system. Now there are 12 main meridians, and then there's a series of some sub-meridians that go horizontally. So those small ones are picking up the energies from the chakras, distributing these to the main meridian lines. Now the meridian lines work in half-hour increments. Okay, so and there's an order, and I'm not an expert in acupuncture or anything, but there's an order, and you can tell by what's going on in somebody's body, by what time of day it is, which meridian line to check to see if there's something going on. Many of you already know this part. So then it starts to look like this. The pranic tube's blue here. So you've got the pranic tube, which is bringing energy in from the cosmic areas and from the earth. It's coming up through here to the chakras. The chakras are picking that energy up and distributing it out to the meridian lines, and the Kundalini is modulating that. And remember, all of this is pyramid based. All of this energy is being controlled by a series of pyramids in our own energy field. Okay? So then we add the vortices, and this is what it starts to look like. Isn't it gorgeous? And then, in addition to this, which is mostly on the physical level, we have the etheric bodies. Oh, and by the way, let me just regress for 1 second. The solar plexus, each chakra has an application to parts of our body, but also parts of our life and issues and everything else. The solar plexus is very important because it's the distributing station between the below energies from the earth and the above energies, the cosmic energy that's coming in, is all spun and mixed. Edgar Cayce used to say that there was a brain in the center of our body. I postulate that this is what he was talking about because the solar plexus is where it's all moderated. And when our solar plexus gets out of whack, our entire system gets out of whack. And if you're interested, it's related to solar plexus, relationships, creativity, and self-expression. And it's also where energies from outside our body enter. When we interact with other people, when we're in the environment, they enter in through the solar plexus. So then we have these bodies, these etheric bodies, that they're kind of nested with us, but they also can be brought out into a stack that's all parallel, and it looks like this. We have the physical body. This is Jules. She's a great girl. And then we have the emotional body, which is always causing trouble. And then we have the mental, the intuitive, and then at the causal level, that's our connection with our divinity. Those bodies are out on either side like pontoons on a boat. And they are mirrored images of each other. And it's interesting because as our consciousness changes and as energy's been changing since the planetary alignment in December, these bodies have changed color. They went from a beautiful combination of teals and blues to fiery red and orange and red and yellow. So I have to change my graphic. And then above that is the soul body, our light body. And it's really knowing what everything is. Is that your higher self? No. It's not. But it's all of the bodies that we relate with in everyday life. Interestingly, here's some things that can happen to the emotional body when we don't deal with our emotional stuff, we don't process it, we don't face it, deal with stuff, our emotional body will swell. I'm just giving you an example of what happens with some of these bodies, okay? And when that body swells, we actually can gain physical weight because there's internal pressure in this body which is causing our physiology to react from an energetic perspective, and we get bigger. And it's fluffy and it's swelling and it's not true weight. But nevertheless, there it is. So this is what the entire system looks like when we put it all together. Every body has its own external field, its own axiom points, its own set of chakras and vortices, which connect from one level of the field to another, communicating to each body. Pretty cool, huh? Kind of overwhelming you when you get in there. You can actually get dizzy because there's so many levels of energy going on and so many different things happening. I'll let you look at that in a minute. It takes a minute to take it all in. But it's all, just like our bodies have systems that work and function, you know, our circulatory system and our brains, our cardiopulmonary system, everything works so beautifully. So does our energy field. And it's full of pyramids. Remember the torus? And I showed you the inside of the torus. Each of us actually exists within the interior of one of those. And as we emote, as we live, as we think, as we expend any kind of energy at all, that energy is coming out from our system into creation and communicating with creation. And creation is communicating back to us. At the same time, the final balancing point in our entire system is the torus itself. And how the energy spins. In a torus, when it's in positive polarity, which is what we want to have, and that's what we had two possibilities on 12/21, or the end of the Mayan calendar, whether it was October or December, whichever you want to talk about. We had two possibilities. We had a possibility of a positive torus situation or a negative torus situation. A negative torus polarity would have caused a pole shift. But we, because of our consciousness and the numbers of us that worked on that, actually stopped that from happening, and we maintained a positive polarity, which is why, as you hear in so many different cultures, we can now move into 1,000 years of peace or a time of expanded enlightenment, because we avoided that negative polarity in the toroid. All right, in the torus, you have when a positive polarity, the energy goes out the bottom. Or it comes in through the donut hole, goes through the torus, up around the side, and back down the hole, just like this, constantly, in every part of it. And you can see that as that's happening, it's feeding our system. Our system is being fed by our own personal toroids. Okay to move? Some of you still photographing? Okay. There we go. So, what happens when we live our duality and we don't realize the effects of our oneness? We get into trouble. We have aspects. I colored them different just for effect. They don't really look like this. We have ourselves in our human form, our human nature, and then in every dimension of reality there is another one of us, past, present, and future. And in our torus, in our toroid form, in all of our energy system, we are literally occupying past, present, and future simultaneously. This is how it works. You've heard about it. This is how it works. Okay? That's a pretty big deal. So what happens when we have a situation where we have like deja vu? What we have done is our consciousness has leaped into one of these aspects temporarily, had the experience in the future, leaped back, and now we get to that future and our consciousness remembers, hey, I already did that. We've already done, wow, this is weird. Didn't we have this conversation already? Deja vu, we all say it, right? That's what's going on. We can go into the past, we can go into the future. The big thing is we want to stay now for all the reasons that I showed you, because when we stay now, we're constantly aware of all of the changes that are occurring, the messages that creation is bringing to us, that's giving us what we need in every way to do what we need now. And we create from now. I'm not saying don't plan for your future, but you can make a plan, set the intention, and creating reality is kind of like throwing a ball, okay? You take that intention and you just imagine it in your hand and you fill it with passion. Just passion from your heart and your soul. And that's how you're going to feel when you get there. Not all the details. How am I going to feel when I get to that reality? And then let it go. And when we do that, we have sent a pure and clear message. This is how I want to feel, creation. Go at it. Bring it to me. And then we get far more than we ever could have expected, because we didn't limit ourselves. We didn't limit creation. And that's what faith is. Faith is knowing that what we have done is already true, and therefore all we have to do is put one foot in front of the other to get there. You know, we have to pray and move our feet. That thing about sitting around and everything will come to me. No, we absolutely have to do our part. And that's what I mean, one foot in front of the other. So, basically, what I've just showed you is what the ancients are trying to tell us on every level, whether it's the largest cosmology or the smallest particle of creation, how we are never separate or disconnected from creation. We cannot possibly be individualized. Each of us is an aspect of all that is, reflected as an individual holographic expression of the divine. Thank you.